What if the choices you think are yours were never really yours at all? What if the way you love, the way you mourn, the way you dream, your hopes, your fears, were not born inside you, but woven around you by forces older than your name? What if society is not something you live in, but something that lives through you, something that shapes your perception of the world itself? Tonight, we open a door into the invisible, into the architecture beneath your beliefs, your habits, your identity, into the world as Émile Durkheim saw it, a world where the most personal things are never simply personal. This is not an easy journey. Durkheim doesn't whisper. He reveals the invisible strings that move us, the laws, categories, and rituals that predate our consciousness. But if you stay with me until the end, you will see your life, your choices, your feelings with a clarity you may never have known before. You may even see the world itself differently, as a society not merely surrounding you, but shaping the very lens through which you perceive reality. Before he became the architect of sociology, Durkheim was simply a boy growing up in a small Jewish family in the quiet French town of Épinal. A boy watching the new industrial world rise, factories humming, cities swelling, traditions collapsing faster than the streets could be paved. A boy who saw his community torn between the old ways and the new machines, between ritual and ambition, belonging and isolation. At 16, he left home for Paris, left the rhythm of small-town life for a city where everyone walked fast and no one looked at each other. He felt the dislocation inside him, a tremor of something he couldn't name. Not sadness, not fear, but a sense that the world was changing too fast for the human soul to keep up. And this is where the seed of his life's work took root. Durkheim did not study society out of curiosity. He studied it out of necessity because he sensed something breaking between people, between traditions, between the individual and the whole. He dedicated his life to one question: what holds us together and what tears us apart? To understand Durkheim, you must enter the grand debate that came before him. Auguste Comte, the father of positivism, dreamed of a science of society, something as rigorous as physics, as predictable as astronomy. But his vision was too heavy, too mechanical, too blind to the soul of collective life. Then came Rousseau, who believed humans were good and society corrupted them. For Rousseau, society was a mask, a distortion. Durkheim stepped into this conversation like a quiet storm. He rejected Rousseau's romantic loneliness. He challenged Comte's cold machinery. He said, "Society is not a mask you wear. It is the air you breathe. Not a prison, not an illusion, but the space where the human spirit comes into being." Across the continent, Weber was working, studying meaning, action, motivation. Freud was looking inward into unconscious drives. Durkheim turned outward, not to individuals, not to psychology, but to something bigger, the invisible rules that shape us before we know we are being shaped. He called them social facts. And yet, social facts are not mere rules. They are the crystallized expression of collective consciousness. They exist both outside the individual and inside, internalized as thought, habit, and instinct. They are the reality of society itself, sui generis, irreducible to the sum of individuals, yet inseparable from them. Durkheim asks a question so simple that it becomes unsettling. Why do we all behave the same way without anyone forcing us? Why do millions of strangers agree on how to greet each other, on how to dress, on which days matter, on who deserves respect, and which emotions are appropriate or forbidden? Why is a marriage not real until society says so? Why does a crime feel different when many people condemn it, versus when no one cares? Durkheim's answer is stark, because society acts on you as a force, a real force, as real as gravity. He calls this force the social fact, a rule, a norm, a belief, strong enough to shape your actions even when you don't want it to. And here lies the paradox. Social facts exist only through individuals, yet are external to each. They are both internal and exterior, a duality that allows society to be at once invisible and omnipresent. If these forces shape your life so deeply, where does your individuality begin? And if your individuality is shaped by society, is it really yours? This is our mystery. Stay close. Durkheim doesn't want us to understand social facts in theory. He wants us to feel them in our bones, to sense them in the quiet, automatic rhythms of our lives, in the way our bodies know what to do before our minds have even caught up. Picture yourself stepping into a funeral hall, the air thick with grief, the hush of people moving around you. Your voice softens instinctively, your movements slow, and you whisper words of condolence, even if they don't fully resonate with your heart. You follow a choreography you never rehearsed, a pattern older than you, taught not by instruction, but by countless generations who mourned in similar ways. Then imagine the delicate intimacy of two people falling in love, a connection so private it feels entirely their own. And yet, society enters silently, shaping the rhythm of their courtship, dictating when the love is recognized, how it should be celebrated, what gestures count, what words matter, and even how they should imagine their future together. It is a quiet architecture of expectation, a force so subtle that the lovers themselves may not perceive it, yet it molds the very shape of their emotions. Later, on an empty street at night, you pause at a red light. There are no cars, no police, no observer to enforce compliance, and yet you stop. Not out of fear, but because a rule larger than your own desire has become part of you, flowing through your instincts and judgments, directing your body before your conscious mind intervenes. Even the words you speak, the grammar that structures your sentences, the very categories with which you perceive time, space, and causality are not personal inventions. They are social facts, handed down, shared, internalized, shaping the very framework of your thought. Every gesture, every thought, every perception is touched by this invisible hand, this inherited architecture of meaning. Durkheim's insight is as simple as it is unsettling. Society does not merely surround you, it resides inside you. It lives in your habits, courses through your attention, frames your imagination, and underwrites your sense of self. You are not simply an individual navigating the world. You are a living vessel through which society flows, a conduit of collective life, an intersection where the past, the culture, and the expectations of countless others converge. In every sigh, every step, every word, society is present, shaping not only what you do, but even how you see what it means to exist. If society shapes our gestures, what about our beliefs, our morals, our sense of right and wrong? Durkheim says, morality is a social fact too. We think morality is personal, based on conscience, upbringing, our inner voice. But your inner voice has an accent. It speaks the language of your culture. It carries the accumulated experience of generations. It tells you what your society trained it to love and what it trained it to fear. Even your most private emotions are shaped by public rules. Love, grief, ambition, anger. They rise and fall according to the rituals, categories, and expectations your society gave you. Durkheim also saw what happens when the architecture fails. Norms collapse, social facts dissolve, and the self loses its anchor. He called this anomie, a state of moral and existential disorientation. He observed it creeping through modern cities: loneliness, anxiety, ambition with no anchor. Today, psychologists confirm his intuition. Humans break when the invisible architecture breaks. Yet Durkheim's vision is not merely diagnostic, it is illuminative. By understanding the architecture, you see both your limitations and your capacities. You see how society shaped you and how you can navigate, interpret, and even transform it. Pause for a second. If your life is shaped by forces you didn't choose, what does that say about you? About responsibility? About guilt? About authenticity? How do you forgive someone who was shaped by a different world? How do you judge someone who never chose the rules they broke? How do you understand yourself when so much of you is not yours alone? Durkheim doesn't give easy answers. He gives clarity. And clarity can feel like cold water on the soul. But clarity also gives the possibility to act knowingly, to inhabit your life fully conscious of the unseen structures that sustain it. Durkheim does not tell you to surrender to society. He tells you to see it. Your individuality is not erased by society, it is made possible by it. Without shared rules, there is no language, no love, no justice, no dreams recognized by others. Language, categories of thought, collective rituals, the very logic we use to understand the world, they all come from society. Society creates the conditions of possibility for thought itself. Freedom begins where invisibility ends. Once you understand the forces shaping you, you can negotiate with them, interpret them, transform them, even resist them intentionally rather than instinctively. You are not merely a product, you are the interpreter, the continuation, the possibility of society. And when many individuals see clearly, society itself can be rebuilt with wisdom beyond what was inherited. Scientific truths, mythological truths, collective reason, all of them are instruments of a society capable of guiding its members consciously. Durkheim's final lesson: you are not a passive product of the world. You are its continuation, its interpreter, its possibility. And now that you've seen the invisible, you will never walk through the world in quite the same way again. If this journey made you think, pause, or see society or yourself with even a hint of new clarity, tell me in the comments, which social fact do you notice most in your life? And should we explore Durkheim's idea of anomie next?